Let's bring in economist Chen Chenchen. She's with the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies at Renmin University of China. So want to talk about this year. Are you optimistic about the resumed trade talks in Beijing coming up next month? And do you think both sides are in a better place relationship-wise to negotiate?
Well, I think currently both sides are delivering the biggest message, which is that we are back into the normal track of the negotiation. Because if you look at the essence of the bilateral relationship between China and the United States, it's actually a relationship between an emerging power and an existing power. And of course, the trade dispute is actually the most prominent and superficial symptom of that bilateral relationship. So of course, both sides actually understand that the negotiation is the only way out. If you want to find common identification with more rules in this bilateral relationship, of course, you want to negotiate. Elanie.
You know, if you look back at when this all started this year in 2018, there was a lot of buildup to the U.S. midterm elections. Now we are past that. But when you look at when this all started, do you think that this trade war is much bigger than anyone anticipated?
Yes. But of course, in China, from the Chinese perspective, as a scholar, I still do not call it a trade war. It's more about trade dispute. Because if you look at the volume of the commodities that are involved in the so-called trade war, it's actually just a small part. So if you look at the influence on the macroeconomy, actually there's not such a big impact because the involved part is still a minor part. But we also understand that if in the future both sides keep adding bargaining chips, then it will become more pessimistic. But we are glad that the positive signal has been sent for now. Elanie.
So that being said, what are your expectations and your predictions in 2019?
Well, I think it's very hard to give a very specific timetable of the ongoing negotiation and the trade disputes. But as far as I understand, especially from last week's Central Economic Trade Work Conference in Beijing, I would say that China will only continue to keep its reform and opening up path because we are currently concluding the experiences of the 40 years of experiences on reform and opening up. And one important lesson is that you are definitely going to continue this marketized economy and also this opening up path. So I actually think from the Chinese side, it will only keep the cool-headedness and to continue this negotiation. Elanie.
That being said, you know, Donald Trump here in the United States is pretty busy with domestic issues. His government is in the middle of a shutdown right now. There's a border wall fight. What kind of impact do you think it could have on negotiations? Do you think he could be so busy that this trade dispute will become less of a priority for the United States?
Well, I think the biggest trouble with the United States is that the current administration brings such a big unpredictability. Recently, actually, my university has a delegation, with me included, to pay a visit to think tanks in Europe. They are also quite anxious and worried that previously, with more predictability in the US government, actually the EU, at the EU level, various countries know what to do in such a trade dispute because they also have exactly the same problems with the market access issue, IPR issue with China. But because of the Trump administration, everyone's plan has been interrupted. So I would say that in 2019, we are still looking forward to more probable predictability within the United States. Otherwise, there's no way out. Elanie.
All right, we'll have to see what happens in 2019. Chen Chenchen, thank you.